what it's like to be a technology entrepreneur today, how to attract top-tier mentors, talent, and investors, and how Michelle Pfister is striving to build a legendary product, company, and category at the same time. All right. Hey ho, let's go. Welcome to this edition of Legends and Losers. I am stoked to have you with us. We have been called one of the best podcasts of all time and the podcast Silicon Valley needs. And so welcome to Legends and Losers, where we aspire to have authentic dialogues that inspire you to design a legendary business and a legendary life. Today, we have an amazing guest, a gal that I find incredibly inspiring, that I have known for, more time than I think probably either of us want to admit, at least 15 years. Her name is Michelle Pfister, and Michelle is the co-founder and chief executive officer of a technology company that's trying to change the way companies do business and interact with their customers. And the company's called UserMind, based up in Seattle. And Michelle and I met years ago when both of us were working at the incredible Mercury Interactive, and she was a product manager. And you know when you meet people in your career and you go, that person's a rock star. I think most people who meet Michelle have that experience. I know I certainly did. And I saw her, kind of rise through the ranks from being a sales engineer doing demos in the field to a product manager to leading product management teams, running one of our most important product lines over time at Mercury. And she's an amazing gal. And she went on to do a whole bunch of other cool things, and now she's raised over $20 million from top-tier venture capitalists, including Andreessen Horowitz. And she moved up to Seattle, and she launched this new company, UserMind. So here she is, the CEO and co-founder of the pioneering company in the emerging category of customer engagement hubs, my good friend, the legendary Michelle Pfister. How you doing, Michelle?
Great. Good to see you, Chris.
It's great to see you.
I know, it's been a long time.
It has been a long time. How long has it been?
I think 8-9 years, man.
I think it's longer than that.
Oh, really?
Well, we sold Mercury in 2006, didn't we not? Yeah, I think we did.
All right.
So I have we seen each other since then?
I don't think so, no.
Well, can I tell you something that may be a little bit corny, but I want to say it to you anyway?
All right.
I'm really fucking proud of you.
Thanks, Chris.
Is that okay?
No, it's good. It's good to hear mentors I've looked up to, and I considered you one of them, be proud of what I've accomplished.
I'm really proud of you, man. You're the CEO of what I believe is a very hot fucking technology company, is it not?
Very hot and going to create its own category.
Yeah, atta girl.
Yeah, totally. It's all about, in fact, since you and I last met, so Opsware became a category. So I led that acquisition, and that became service automation.
Yep.
And I went and joined Apptio, and TBM is now a Gartner category, and a couple thousand people do it. And
remind me what TBM stands for.
Oh, come on. Technology Business Management, Chris.
Oh, okay. There we go.
I just turned BT around.
You just took BTO and swizzled it around a little?
Yep. And so that was Apptio, and now I'm trying to make a third category at UserMind. So.
And what's the category at UserMind?
Well, I mean, it's still early days here, but we call ourselves a customer engagement hub.
Customer engagement hub.
Yeah. Which is kind of sexy. That's probably what the analysts are going to call it. I'm not exactly sure what the market's going to call it. Our theory essentially is that CRM is going to get reinvented, and that the future of customer engagement is essentially all data-driven and all real-time. And that, kind of the idea that sales is really the one channel is going away. So when you think about the future is, omni-channel. I could be on my phone. I could be calling into a call center. I could be in a web app, all the same company, all the same business process.
I'm sorry, Michelle. There's some kind of swirling or some fucking
noise?
Some weird. Yeah. It's like there's a little squeak somewhere in the mic or something.
Uh,
Is your chair squeaking when you move, or is something going on?
Chairs,
Do you
hold on.
have anything nefarious that vibrates in there? Or?
Well, I'm also in a room with a fan, Chris. If there's a lot of, I can move to another room. So let me try this chair. How are we doing? Is this any better?
Trying to,
Nefarious squeaking.
I don't know. I don't hear the chair. Say, talk some more.
Talk some more. I don't know. There's a fan in here. Is that?
I don't hear it now.
I have my two dogs, but they're being
Dogs are fine.
dogs.
Little barking noise on.
Yeah, they're good to go. So maybe it was the chair.
Swizzle around in it.
Better?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't hear it now. So, all right. So why don't we just start again?
Yeah. Awesome.
How are you, Michelle?
Good. Great to see you, Chris.
It's great to see you. You look fantastic.
Haven't aged a day 10 years later.
You really don't look like you've aged a day.
I don't know. I still get carded. I wish there was a secret. I keep hoping for some gray hair, but
How often do you get carded?
well, actually less now, because I think if you stand up close, I'm definitely, looking a little ragged after these 4 years of founding my own company. But, definitely still looking a little young for my taste.
Well, you'll appreciate that as you continue along the path called life.
I know at some point it becomes amazing, right?
Yeah, because I look in the mirror and go, hey, who the fuck put a picture of Dennis Hopper in the bathroom? And I don't mean young, cool Dennis Hopper. I mean, well, maybe old, cool Dennis Hopper.
At least you're not at the old, crazy Dennis Hopper yet.
I'm working hard on that, though.
I keep drinking. That's really
yeah.
awesome.
I do like to drink.
The drinking muscles, right?
Yeah. Have you been drinking a lot lately yourself?
Since I founded my company, yes, I feel like I drink frequently in my spare time.
So is alcoholism and entrepreneurship a good thing or a bad thing?
I don't know, stress relief. I feel like Ben once told me that every founder either gets fit or fat. And I'm like, well, I haven't gotten fit because I'm not compulsively exercising, and I haven't gotten fat, thank God. But, I don't know how I'm an anomaly, because I do feel like, all founders have to cope with so much stress that you drink more, you eat a lot, right? You don't have enough time, so you probably either work out compulsively or don't at all. So anyway, who knows? It's the founder curse.
So have you not really been taking care of yourself since you started UserMind?
No, barely. Actually, this year is the first year I gave myself a challenge. I was kind of inspired by Zuckerberg and his yearly challenge. So this year I'm hiking Rainier, or climbing Rainier. So I've been hiking quite a lot trying to get ready for that, because I desperately don't want to be like that fat fuck, right? Like in the group of 10 people, like the one that just can't do it, right? The weak animal culled from the herd. So yeah.
Who's that chick way at the back, that fat fuck way at the back? Who the fuck's that?
Exactly, like sending her down the fucking mountain. I'm like, I need a real external goal to be motivated. So it's been working is I guess my message.
And how high is the climb?
It's about 14,000 feet. So.
And do you start at sea level, or where do you start?
No, you start about halfway up. I mean, the climb is really, you do it in 3 days, but the actual summiting is only a couple hours. So you hike up part way, sleep overnight, practice with ice axes, and then 1 in the morning, or you kind of summit really early and go all the way down. So it's probably among the cool mountains the easiest one to get to for a non-technical climber like me.
Yeah, very, very cool.
Mm-hmm.
We just last week was it last week or the week before? I don't know. It was a couple of scotches ago, but we had Eric Weinmeier on the show.
Okay.
And Eric is one of the most extraordinary adventure athletes in the world. He's done all 7 summits, including Everest. And he wrote a book recently about his latest big journey, which was he solo kayaked the Grand Canyon.
Wow.
Yeah, and the other wow is Eric is fucking blind.
Holy hell.
Yeah, he's a very serious dude. He's amazing, incredibly inspirational, and humble and funny, and I absolutely have a full-on man crush on Eric. So Hey man, if Eric can do all that shit,
Yeah, fuck, I can get up in here,
you
right?
gotta be able to do it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's funny. You actually made me think of something. I was answering a question the other day about being a founder, and I tell people being a founder is a paradox, but you made me think of it when you talked about him and kind of how crazy or insane he is. I think founders are both totally single-minded and insane, and also super humble. Like most successful founders are irrationally convicted about some big idea. Or for him, he's a blind man kayaking down the white water of the Grand Canyon, right? You kind of got to be irrationally convicted that you can do it. But on the flip side, generally speaking, you got to take a lot of input and a lot of help to be successful, a lot of whatever, customer feedback, VC feedback, employee feedback. And I think I've become much more aware of how founding or being a CEO brings out the kind of polar opposite sides of your personality.
That's interesting. Say more about that.
Well, I mean, I think just in general, so I'll tell you, when I founded the company, I interviewed, so kind of classic Mercury style, right? I didn't have a specific product idea, but I knew I wanted to build as big an.
I hate to interrupt you, but I'm going to.
Yeah.
So you said, hey, I want to start a company, but I don't know what the fuck I want to do, but I'm just going to start a company. Is that how it?
It wasn't actually quite that. So even before then, I had left Aptio and I wasn't sure I wanted to found. And so
How far into Aptio did you start and then finish?
Yeah, so I was employee 19, so pretty early, and I left about 500. So I was there 3.5 years. Really, kind of, when I joined, they had a product. They probably had 12 customers, and the price point was maybe 15K. And so we kind of reinvented the company, invented the category, positioned it for the enterprise, positioned it for executives. And, over the next kind of 3.5 years, we got a price point of, 250, 300K. So, I was there for kind of the meat of what I would call the product market fit part of the journey, I left kind of as we were, we opened Europe, we opened Asia while I was there, but, a lot of the scale came after I left, obviously the pre-IPO work.
Yeah, I'm just checking out of curiosity. The market cap right now is 675 million.
Nice. Yeah. When I left, it was about 500. So,
yeah, which is a little light for a public company, right? In the tech space, 500 is sort of the edge, I think, right now.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah,
but so maybe a little small to be public. I don't know. How old's the company?
Oh gosh, no, it's funny. I feel like now founding, I've forgotten everything I ever knew about most things. I'm guessing it's 9 years old now.
Let's see, just out of curiosity.
9, is that right? 8.
Aptio founding. It says 2007. So yeah, that would be 10 years.
Yeah, there you go. About right.
So yeah, they got public right, and the IPO was how long ago now?
September 23rd last year. So
yeah, so they hit the IPO sweet spot, the 6 to 10 law.
Yeah.
I don't know if did you read Play Bigger?
I haven't yet, actually. I was actually looking at it online. I mean to read it, but
yeah, well, you lived it, so it'll feel really.
I figure I learned everything I knew from you guys about that. So yeah.
Actually, I think you'll get a lot out of the book because it takes, if you take the Mercury experience and what you've done since then around category design, it takes that stuff from the implicit to the explicit, and it really lays it all out. But one of the things in the book, we did about $750,000 of primary research. And one of the things we analyzed was we took every tech company founded from 2000 to the end of 2015, which is when we handed in the manuscript. And we tracked every financing they did and how they grew in value. And one of the things that we asked was, we said, is there any correlation between the age of the company at time of IPO and its ability to produce what we described as enduring value? And we decided to define enduring value as take the stock price on the close of day one of trading and see what happens over time. And we found something really fucking remarkable, which is all the companies that produce enduring value get public between 6 to 10 years of their founding.
Interesting.
And what we think that means, so that's the data, so there's no interpretation, that's the data. What we think it means is that's probably how long it takes for A, a category to tip, and B, the king to emerge and take all the economics. It's the only thing that makes any real sense. And we compared it to this guy named Gorowski wrote a book several years ago now called The Evolution of Markets. And he has a simple way of sort of looking at how categories grow over time. And it sort of fits with, he divides them into 3 stages. I think it's design, develop, and dominate, or something like that. Anyway, that middle stage sort of fits perfectly with sort of the 6 to 10 kind of sweet spot idea. So that's what my spider senses tell me is the reason the companies that produce enduring value do so is because they get public monetize the value, and the correlation. There's got to be a correlation between how companies create value and how categories work. And so that's an educated guess. There's no, of course, data you can have around that, but yeah, 6 to 10 years. So how old is Usermind?
We're 4 years in now, so we're kind of on the I think the category is beginning to emerge. So we're probably at the middle stage of the company now. Yeah.
And that would make sense because, of course, enterprise categories take a little longer, and consumer categories are quicker.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. I have a lot of theories about there's many small sub elements that tell you have a category kind of along the way, which would be interesting to kind of compare notes on how I think about building categories, and kind of you guys have much more data than just kind of my couple that I've been, part of. But yeah, no, when I left Apptio, I wasn't sure I was going to found. I mean, I literally, I was trying to decide what I want to do next. I had a thread of an idea, but I didn't have a particular idea I wanted to go do. And so I literally just networked over the course of 3 months. I mean, I hadn't done it. I was at Mercury for 7 years, and then, leading the OpsWare acquisition and going straight to Apptio. I never really took time to think about, what was interesting to me or kind of where I wanted to be. And, the interesting thing is at the end of, and literally I talked to everybody from two guys in a garage with their dog looking for a business founder, all the way to GitHub. I was, really passionate about GitHub as kind of could be a next gen Mercury, and had a lot of opinion about kind of their strategy and what I could do. And, I just at the end of that, I thought there's really only one or two CEOs that I talked to that I'd want to work for. And so, Ben always told me one day you'll wake up and you can't work for anybody else. And
I assume you mean Ben Horowitz at Andreessen Horowitz.
Yeah, Ben Horowitz. Yeah. And so literally
what did he say to you about picking CEOs?
He just said, you're going to wake up one day and you can't work for anyone else. And so I thought to myself, okay, why are there only two CEOs here that I could work for? And at the end of the day, it was probably that I just was unemployable at that point. And I
say this with love and respect.
Yes.
You were pretty unemployable back when we worked together at Mercury.
I know. I've always been employable only by the strongest of people.
You and me both, sister, by the way.
Yeah, but so I think I just was over and I thought to myself, well, why aren't I founding? And the answer was fear. And, I was afraid of founding. And I thought that's not a good
I hate to interrupt you again, but I'm going to keep doing it. What were you afraid of around founding a company?
Was I ready? Did I know how to do it? Could I be successful? I mean, it sounds silly.
Do you mind if I ask you how old you were when you founded the company? Is that fair?
Oh,
or is that not
40.
Fair?
I mean, can you believe it? 40 years old and afraid. And by the way, 40 years old and, part of a couple amazing tech brands. My mentor, Ben Horowitz, is one of the most powerful VCs in the Valley. I had just been part of Apptio when I joined, it was a rocket ship. So, you think factually, why would you be afraid? And most of it's just personal insecurity and fear. So, I've always felt that almost, if there's one thread of my life, it's that almost every life-changing decision I've made was leaning into fear. This is a great example, founding the company. But, I don't know, you probably don't know the story. When Mercury acquired HP, HP acquired Mercury, I was in Israel, and Yuval called me up. Yuval, who was the head of products at the time at Mercury, called me up and said, hey, it was just really broken.
I remember him very well.
I love him. He was another one of my great mentors. So,
he's a great executive, isn't he?
Oh, so great. Yeah.
Just a natural born leader.
Incredible. And, he's just been, one of the great mentors and advisors of my life. In fact, when I founded, both he and Amnon, the CEO of Mercury, helped me raise my first round. So,
I was just about to ask you how you attracted some. So is Ben Horowitz is on your board, is he not?
He is, yeah.
And what are the other VCs? Remind me.
So CRV was also in the Series A. That was the Mercury connection. They're Yuval's company. And then Menlo Ventures, letter B. That's Matt Murphy. So great guys. I mean, Matt was at Kleiner.
So who's on your board now? Yeah, I know Matt. Not well, but I'm trying to remember what We did a little something together once, but I can't, it'll.
Yeah, so it's just me, Ben Horowitz, and Matt Murphy on the board.
Great.
Members, yeah.
That's a hell of a start, though. And what was the Series A was what?
7.6 million.
Series B was
14.5. So we've raised 22.1.
There you go.
Not too shabby.
And are you willing to share with me what the valuation was on the last round, or do you not want to talk about that?
I mean, we did okay. You know, it was a 55 post. You know, we raised. We're actually lucky now. We raised right as the market was crashing. And so, you know, Ben's advice was don't drive for a sky high valuation. Basically, double your last post. And you know, thank God because actually valuations have gone down since. You know, in the last 18 months. So I have a lot of friends who raised too high last time and are taking down rounds, and we're not going to be in that situation. So I actually have never really cared about dilution. I'm not particularly money motivated. So for me, the driver in raising has always been, you know, the quality of the money, you know, who's the board member or who's the investor we can get that'll help us build a real software company, a material enterprise software company. And then the second big driver for me, you know, is how much money can I get, and can I get every single dollar possible? Because generally you're wrong more than you're right. And so to me, money is just optionality, right? Allows you to make more mistakes.
You mean you can't be a legend without being a loser?
Yeah, exactly. In fact, you know, you're a loser 1,000 times, and then, you know, it adds up somehow to being something legendary, I think.
It's funny because nobody fucking talks about that. And I think it screws us up as a culture, as a society, because we forget exactly that. I was on the phone with an entrepreneur today who I'm an advisor and investor to, a guy I've known a long time, awesome entrepreneur. And I can't remember whether it was my idea or his idea, but we had an idea for a promotional marketing thing to do for his company. And so they went off and did it. We were sure we were going to kill everybody. And so he was giving me an update on it. And he's like, well, it's one of the most expensive things and stupidest fucking things we ever did. And I just started laughing. And I'm like, well, good. That's another thing that we now know doesn't work.
Yep, exactly. Well, you know, it's interesting. So when I started the company, kind of back to like, I didn't have an idea. I have a hypothesis about how categories are created. And so my hypothesis is that categories are created when more than 3 big changes, what the Valley likes to call disruptions, affect the same individual in a company. That's kind of my secret hypothesis. And
so hold on, I want to make sure I understand this.
Yeah.
Categories happen when 3 big disruptive changes hit one person. Mm-hmm. You know, like the head of HR or the VP of sales or whatever.
Yeah, because only then do you have a buyer who is under enough pain that they need to change the status quo and move money to another vendor and establish something new. And to me, without that pain or that level of need, it's not natural to create a category, right? The natural thing is to buy more from existing vendors. The natural thing is to go ask analysts what to do. The unnatural act is to actually do something radically different. And actually, so my experience has been, not only does that have to happen, but generally speaking, there's like 50 visionaries in the world who will bet on you before you're an early adopter. And if you get them, you make the whole market, because they're the only people who can, in that circumstance, still act and recognize they need to do something radically different. And so to me, that's the recipe for like, how do you build a category king? It's find all those changes, find that persona, and then within that, find the needles in the haystack, right? Find the 25 to 50 enterprise visionaries who are going to bet on you to make you a household name.
That is so wise what you say, Michelle. So wise. I recently had a conversation with a buddy of mine who's on Legends and Losers. His name is Eddie Yoon. And Eddie is the category guru to the Fortune 100. And particularly big consumer brands. And he's written a bunch for HBR, and he's got a new book out called Super Consumers. And it's a great fucking book. And Eddie's just awesome. And, you know, we've compared notes over time, and he helped with Play Bigger, the book, and just a great guy. Anyway, one of the things that he says in Super Consumers is 10% of the customers in the category can move the category.
Oh, yeah.
And he said the biggest problem most companies have, and remember what the world that he lives in, is they assume that's 10% of their customers. Mm-hmm. It's 10% of the customers in the category, in the space, can move the market. And so if you get those, and then they become evangelists, and of course the rest takes care of itself, right? So I couldn't agree more, and the reason I agree is because that's what Eddie taught me.
Yeah, totally. But back to like losing and being wrong. So I literally just made a list of all the things I thought were changing, and kind of the first one was that I've spent my whole career building tooling for IT, and so I was like, well, I think all the software in the future is going to get acquired by the front office. And, it doesn't matter, Gartner says the CMO spends more than IT now than the CIO, but like, forget that. It's the whole business. Every single business function is going to get reinvented through software in my mind. And so I was like, well, I'm going to go try and find a category company in that market, because that's the market of the future. And so if you look at kind of, and then I just made a list of like, what are all the big mega shifts I see in the business? And it started with the basic ones, right? Every company is becoming a subscription company. Every single business owner, every CMO is going to have a technology team inside their function. So you have marketing ops and sales ops and HR ops. Okay, that's a new team that's going to emerge, that's going to support them. They're all going to have hundreds of software applications that run the business. Oh, by the way, all of them are going to have APIs. So that was my list, and they don't have to be seemingly fully connected. But they're all really, really true, right? Subscription businesses tend to be open. It's really hard to renew. Therefore, you build APIs. If the technology is too complicated and you don't want to wait for IT, so you build your own ops teams. These are all obvious and inevitable things that I just made a list of, really not really too smart to kind of come up with that list. And so I said to myself, okay, well, who am I going to go interview about the state of the world? And so I said, I'm going to go target these ops teams. I'm going to target this. It's, by the way, one of the fastest growing job titles on LinkedIn. It's pretty fascinating.
Sales ops, marketing ops, IT ops, finance ops, whatever ops.
Everything but IT, by the way. I call it biz ops because it's a new type of operations where they're not really classic IT people. They're kind of hackers. They know the business. They know the technology. And in fact, they really only do a couple things. They analyze. So basically, they like manage the stack of tech. So they configure, Marketo or Salesforce or whatever. They integrate stuff. So they try and connect stuff together so that you can do the kind of lead to customer lifecycle that they're responsible for. They do a lot of analytics. They try and say, okay, in that workflow, hey, if I looked at like prospect to customer, what's working and what's not working. And the fascinating thing to me, so I basically just, standard kind of product manager stuff. I wrote down 20 questions, starting with what's a day in your life and how many apps do you have and who do you report to and what are your MBOs, and like, tell me about, did you make or miss your last MBO, and blah, blah, blah. And you don't have to get farther than a day in the life, because I interviewed them, and over and over, everybody kept saying to me, well, I walk in the morning and I log into 10 different systems. And then I collect one piece of data from each system, and I write an email to my boss about the state of the funnel. And I sent it to him, and I said, and I did this every day over and over again. And so I'm like, So, and I said, well, why do you do that? Well, the data isn't connected. Well, why do you, like, there's no workflow across all those systems. I don't have any picture of that. And I'm like, okay, so who reads your email? Oh, all the C-levels in your company. That's interesting. Or like every business executive reads it. What's the outcome of them reading that email? Well, we change the strategy and we try something different the next day. And I'm like, well, how do you do that? Well, we go in and like manually tweak all these systems, and then we run the same process, and the next day I send the same email. And by the way, that was a common theme across sales ops, marketing ops, and they don't talk to each other because they all clearly are not realizing that they're all living in the same hell. By the way, even HR ops, right? The employee life cycle.
It's interesting. I've talked to 3 startups who are trying to deal with similar kinds of ideas, that all this workflow and data is all in all these fucking places. And if it's not a system you use all the time, it's like really hard to deal with. And even if it is, I look at it in our little world, at Legends and Losers, and it's like trying to figure out, other than a couple of key metrics, particularly downloads. But beyond that, trying to figure out what the fuck's going on from a data analytics point of view, really, really fucking hard, because it's here, it's there, it's we're in these different distribution, so we're omni-channel. And then the other thing too is like what feeds what, right? So we have no fucking clue. Is like LinkedIn a good place for us, or is Facebook a good place for us? Or, when 5,000 people like a post on Facebook, does that mean anything? Or like, who the fuck knows, right? And so it's all of that, right?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So my theory is basically the future, the answer to that question of how do you look at that and say, I'm going to go from there to value. And to me, the missing piece is context. So you want to, in order to know if that LinkedIn, like if Facebook is good, you have to be able to connect all the data about the customer and say, okay, did Michelle engage me on Facebook? Or did, this anonymous person engage me on Facebook? But it's all the same person. It's all the same record. So you kind of have to connect the data together to have context on the data. But then the other missing link is because the workflows execute in each system as a silo. So you basically go run a campaign in Facebook, but you don't own the data. You can't tell if Michelle from Facebook ever came and watched the podcast. Simple example. Because the podcast watching
That's
is
right.
a web tracker. So that's why you need to have, in our world, we have an architecture where the data store is tightly coupled to a rules engine. And my theory is that basically you have to be able to marry the data together, but in context of a workflow. So in our system, you basically create these milestones that says, send Facebook ad, and then I track the website and say, well, did Michelle ever get there? And I can tell you're the same person with your cookie. And the reason you need to do that is, like, if you can close the loop, you can say, well, what campaigns were effective for what segments of users? And so my belief is, where I go back to, like, what's the future of CRM? The future.
So is this sort of like business event correlation in that sense?
You got it. So I'm building monitoring and automation for the front office.
In the business. So you're just monitor shit, and then when certain things happen, automate that shit.
Yeah. So I'm basically like, if a CMDB married the marriage of Opsware and a monitoring tool. So my workflows run in production, listen for events in real time, they take action, but then they feed all their data back into the CMDB so we can constantly say, oh gosh, that campaign, guess what? Young people between 18 and 25, they're the ones who come in from Facebook onto the podcast. So in future, I'm gonna enrich my CMDB of data with third-party information, and I'm gonna better focus that campaign there. And named people, the people who come give you their name and they've signed up for the podcast, those people respond to Twitter really well. I'm making it up.
Yeah.
But to me, the future
is... And so you're pulling, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I want to make sure I understand. So you're pulling in data from whatever the app is, whether it's Twitter, a custom app, our website, Google Analytics, I assume some Omniture, whatever the fuck they call that now, Salesforce, of course, Marketo.
By the way, help desks, call centers, the full life cycle, billing.
You guys are doing IT help desk shit too, right?
Yeah, we integrate to those guys for sure, so we can get call data or case data. Yeah. And then we map it together into the golden records. Just like, there used to be the service record, right? In the CMDB, you had your golden definition of an app. Well, we have the golden customer record. We map all that together. And then we trigger rules off of it. And we say, okay, we're going to run complicated cross-system workflow so that we can track what works, right? That's the key. And my theory is that, if you look at, let's see. So that's like a small definition of what UserMind does. And why is it interesting? Well, it's really strategic.
And you call that shit again a customer engagement hub.
Yeah. I know. I'm a terrible marketer, Chris. It's always been.
I didn't say a fucking thing.
I know, but it is.
I just asked you the question.
Terrible thing. But look, to me, that's where.
So you got to go to work on your category design. Is that what you're telling me?
Well, at least the naming for sure. But, look, from my point of view, I'm actually less worried about the name right now than getting people focused on the problem or opportunity. And the problem is that the entire way people think about CRM is essentially dead from my point of view. CRM is not Salesforce automation, right? CRM is not, batch. CRM is not, like a single phone call. The future of customer engagement, the future of what real CRM is fully contextual. So think about a simple example. You're on the web, you're interacting with an app, and you call the call center. 100% of the time, you have to repeat everything you just did. And then when they transfer you to somebody else,
it's even worse. Even if you don't do anything in the app, you fucking call.
Yeah.
And they ask you all this shit, and you tell them your mother's maiden name and all that fuck shit. Yeah. And then then you need to talk to Jimmy. And you talk to Jimmy, and he says, hey, who the fuck are you? And we're at zero again.
Yeah. So that's, by the way, a problem of context, which is that think about it. Like, when companies were evolving, all these teams implemented all their own fucking applications. And the problem is that the applications don't connect. The customer data, your data, our context. It's not just one phone call, by the way. You should know everything about me. By the way, the future is it's all fucking digital. So you can know everything about me. You can know everything about
That's the fucking point, right?
Exactly. So from my point of view, if you think about that world, in a world where it's all digital, you can know everything about me. Customer experience is going to be the new battlefront. I mean, companies are going to basically live or die based on how well they do that. And doing that well is about context. And it's about context of information following you around within the company, not externally. And it's about personalized, relevant action as a result of that context. So it's a very hard technology problem. I mean, if you peel back what we've built, it's some pretty like unsexy shit. We've built a hardcore integration platform. We have a really sophisticated rules engine, and we have a giant data store. But the thing is, all those things are not unique individually. What's unique is that they're on the same platform and they're tightly coupled, so that if you add more data in the data store, the rules engine gets smarter. And if you connect more stuff in through integrations, your information gets more complete. So that's kind of how I think about what we do. And really, from my point of view, it's not like it's starting with customer engagement. So like we're talking about this example because it's sexy, because customer experience is essentially how every company is going to win or lose the next generation of millennials. But if you think about it, there's no reason you don't have the same platform running your HR functions or your partner life cycles.
Right.
Right. So when you really think about it 20 years out, I tell everybody, okay, when you go to the cloud, I love Benioff. Benioff's a genius. Benioff he like invents both the subscription model of SaaS and the technology of SaaS. And along the way, he solves installation and he solves upgrade. Well, Benioff didn't fucking make configuring apps any easier, right? For every $1 you spend on Salesforce, you spend $10 on config management. So if you really think about the logical view that 20 years from now, every front office function is going to be run on arbitrary number, hundreds to thousands of apps that are mostly third party, because you're not going to build them yourself. You're losing control over some of the most important things in your company. And the two most important things in your company are your data about your customers and employees and partners, and your business logic, your workflows. And so my theory is that UserMind evolves to become, not just the customer engagement platform in 5 years, but like one of the most important core applications managing the entire front office. Because
and I think what you're saying is even more important in light of Facebook's recent announcement around Facebook groups.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so did you hear what they did a couple of weeks ago?
No, sorry. Horse blinders. Sometimes,
yeah, no, I know.
Sometimes I miss core shit.
When you're in the bunker. Facebook said a couple of weeks ago that their huge push is going to be groups. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how long ago, they said they anticipate 80% of the content will be video. But I look at that and I look at it from, our perspective at Legends and Losers. And I go, isn't this interesting? YouTube, Stitcher, and mostly iTunes have all the data around what our listeners and audience does with our shit.
Yeah.
And now Facebook has all the fucking data about who's in our Facebook group and what they're doing and and so it's like, it's this weird thing. You're waking up as a business person and you're going, all these other fucking quote unquote platforms have all my fucking data.
Yep. Yeah.
And I think it was Malik years ago, and if I get it wrong, I'm sorry, but I think he said Facebook is not a platform for you to monetize. You are a platform for Facebook to monetize.
Totally.
And so the interesting thing is when you have all these cloud, quote unquote, platforms, some of which are free or very inexpensive, well, you don't know what the fuck they're doing with your data. And there's things they won't let you do with your data. I'll give you one example. Fucking iTunes won't tell us how many subscribers Legends and Losers has.
Crazy.
And when I found that, I was like, what are you fucking talking about? That's like the number one thing we need to fucking know, right? Yeah, well, go fuck yourself. Yeah. You're not getting that.
Yeah.
And so it's this weird world that we live in now where there's this rich data about our business, our customers, our relationships that are sitting on these other platforms. And dealing with it, to your point, is really hard. Like, how do I synthesize all of it to figure out what the fuck's going on and whether any of it's fucking working? And B, hey, that's my fucking shit. It just happens to be sitting on, right?
Yeah. Yep. So think about it. Every enterprise, Bank of America, airlines, right? Alaska Airlines. I mean, every one of these companies better become a platform. That's who they're competing with. They better figure out how the fuck to become a platform where all the data in their own walls, they can marry together and take action on, because that's the missing piece. Most of these platform vendors have basically thought data was the end game. And to me, data is not the end game. It's the action off the data that's the end game. Obviously, you want the data, but the future, this is like AI is the future. It's doing something in fucking real time with the data. So so I really think like every enterprise company is going to become a full subscription company. They need a technology platform to monetize and manage the customer data and the customer engagement, right? Intelligence, right? All this, the actions. How do you use that fucking data, right? To engage me differently, right? That's the key.
But it also sounds like you're giving me the ability to, if you will, take back control, some of the control, some of the data. So I actually know what's going on in my Facebook group or what's going on in my Twitter feed, and and how that triangulates to my website, and how that triangulates to purchasing if you're direct selling or whatever it is, right? So I can connect a set of dots that I couldn't connect before.
Yeah.
So let me make sure I understand, Michelle. So,
yeah.
As a CMO, I want to run a campaign.
Yeah.
And we're going to go omni-channel. So we're going to be digital mostly, or as Saturday Night Live says, mostly, and we're going to do maybe some offline shit, and we're going to do some direct email and right? But most of the shit's going to be digital, and you're going to tell me essentially the outcomes of those digital marketing, for lack of a better word, actions that I take, some of which are in systems that I own, i.e. Marketo. Some of them are in systems I don't own, i.e. a Facebook group. And A, you're going to show me what the fuck's going on. And B, you're going to show me, for lack of a better description, you tell me if I'm using the wrong words, correlations around things that I'm doing that lead to certain actions. And those actions either lead to good business outcomes or not good business outcomes. Is that fair?
In fact, we call them business outcomes. Yes.
I think that's exactly what you should call them, Michelle. I think business outcomes is exactly the right phrase for that.
It is. From the master.
Okay, so I definitely want to go back to the business, but hey, how the fuck are you as a human being? How are you?
Good. Working my ass off. It depends.
Are you assless yet?
I'm not assless. It might be nice, right? I told you, I've neither become a thin CEO nor a fat CEO. No, look, life is great. I mean, I feel like
you're living in Seattle now. Is that right?
Yeah, I moved up here for my last startup. Yeah.
Oh, right, Aptio. Now, I get why you moved there. And what made you decide to stay?
Well, two reasons.
Was it the rain?
It's not the weather.
No, I love Seattle.
Yeah, no, two reasons. I think, one is kind of like the more obvious reason, and the second is the less obvious reason. So, obviously I think the culture up here is less hyped, right? I mean, it's, there's probably just as much development depth here and kind of less bullshit. And I've never been I'm not, me, come on, Chris, I'm not political. I'm like pretty authentic.
Really?
I don't really like
Has HR ever called you and said they had an issue with something you said, Michelle? That's never happened to you, has it?
Fuck, I have things in my file, probably every fucking company.
Oh God. I remember one speech you gave at Mercury, and you were on fire and you were swearing like a drunken pirate on stage. And I was thinking, wow. I mean, I think you've laid down the mofos on stage and shit.
Oh yeah.
By the way, I can I say, I love chicks who swear.
Me too.
I really do.
Yeah, no, whatever. Anyway, but like, I don't, I'm definitely not, I don't fit into that kind of weird, overhyped bro, like we're solving world peace. I mean, it's just fucking software. And I love it. I love building software. And I love, like, to me, it's very personal. I love when, like, I go to the customer and I show them something and their life gets better because of some software I built. And like that, it doesn't need to be more noble than that. I like creating something from nothing. And I like that people find value in that and pay me money for that value. And that, like, we're helping each other. But I don't know. There's just a lot of bizarre valley kind of over the topness that doesn't exist here. And I like that. I like that here. Look, the other big reason to me is kind of I don't have kids obviously, but I think economic opportunity is mostly going to be in information technology, right? In white collar business work, like what we do, right? It's tech driven work, and
and I think it's also IP, intellectual white collar work,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Creative
Well,
work, development work,
sales, right?
yes.
Exactly. But to me, a lot of the opportunity that's associated with that is going to go to all the emerging companies that are going to disrupt these businesses. Whether it's me building a category that is going to disrupt the way CRM is done, or whether it's like some banking software that disrupts banks. And I'm just a firm believer that a big problem in the United States is that the economic opportunity is trapped in Silicon Valley. I mean, the money primarily goes to the Valley, therefore all the good jobs are in the Valley, therefore everyone moves to the Valley, and I don't think it's that complicated. The minute there could be a second Valley where you're almost as likely to succeed there with your dollar of investment as you are in the Valley, there can be 100, right? If there's only one, there can be only one. But the minute there's two, there could be 10,000.
It's interesting, and I get what you're saying. Yeah. And I really want to believe it's possible, because I think everything you said is right. And, there's a lot of snot-nosed driving, Tesla driving douchebags that you just want to punch in the face. Yeah. By the way, I have nothing against Tesla, but you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. But it's interesting. A lot of different regions have tried to create themselves as the new Silicon Valley, and it's really never worked. And we did some analysis back during the time we were writing Play Bigger on category kings by region, and it's not even close, right? And so I think it's just very hard to do this outside of the Valley. Now, the interesting thing is, you grew up in the Valley, and Seattle's not exactly, not
the Valley.
I'm not going to name any particular place, so I'll just say bumfuck. I'll say bumfuck Idaho. So Seattle's not exactly bumfuck Idaho. Yeah. So it's an interesting choice that you've made.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, I think if I want to give you the contra argument for like why Seattle, why now? To me, one of the single biggest factors in the Valley being the Valley is the nurse trees, right? So it was Silicon Graphics and Hewlett Packard, and those were really the early.
What did you call them?
Silicon Graphics. Oh, the nurse trees.
The nurse trees.
Yeah, so in a forest, there's kind of the redwoods. Like a tree falls down, and the basically decomposition of the tree, nurses the forest. It kind of all the trees grow up on that tree. And so, now in the Valley, it's called the diaspora, right? You have a successful company and all these people, the little mafias emerge. So we have nurse trees. I mean, Amazon and Microsoft are two, I would say, equivalent sized technology companies and impactful, in terms of the depth of like full life cycle talent they're hiring, from devs to marketing to everything. I think equivalent to, I mean, you can't argue, Bezos is dominating modern cloud. He invented it in the same way that, Silicon Graphics and HP dominated and invented, the things of their time. Microsoft might be a little faded, but, let me tell you, that's that center of gravity. And then you look for the early signs, right? So of exits. So we've had, Tableau. We've had, the Concur acquisition.
Tableau is unbelievable. It's interesting. It feels like it goes in waves, but I go through these waves down here where I get emails, 2 a week for a few weeks from business intelligence startups. And I took a couple of runs at this in the last decade or so, trying to coach BI companies, and all of them whiffed. Mm-hmm. And I got to a point where I just hate the fucking BI space, and there's a bunch of reasons we talk about if you care. But one of them is I think Tableau kind of won. There's no. It's like, hey, I know they're not here, folks, but it looks like there's a fucking category king in the BI 2.0 space, and it ain't any of you fucks.
Yep. Yeah.
Right?
And by the way, now Tableau's in trouble because, Microsoft is going to basically just suck all the money out of their market. Right?
I don't think they are, Michelle.
Oh, I can tell it's happening. I mean,
if they do, it'll have more to do with Tableau fucking up than Microsoft doing something legiondary in BI.
That might be, by the way, it's certainly possible. I mean, anytime you have founders leave, that's a big shift. Who's the you always want to ask yourself, who's the technical founder who's going to invent the next product. And one of my theories about IPOs is that successful companies who IPO, to your point, to deliver enduring value at IPO time have a second business they're building. Meaning, if you're launching and you're us and you would be IPOing on the customer engagement hub idea, you better have a second business. And that second business might be, employee management. It might, if you're HubSpot, it was, we IPO'd on marketing automation and we're launching into CRM. But, most great.
And I would call that a second category.
Yeah. Chapter category, but like it's a material, I wouldn't call it line extension, but it's a category extension. It literally
That's exactly right.
Doubles or triples your addressable market using some unique IP and market understanding that you have, such that only you can monetize or can act on, and go after that. Anyways, I think that's Tableau's challenge, is like, what's the next great chapter of Tableau? And to some extent, we don't have one. At a certain point, technology can be commoditized if the market's moving so fast. That I think the life of Category Kings is actually the life of your latest category, as opposed to the one you're dominating.
Well, I would say it differently. The life of a category is as long as so categories live as long as the world agrees with you about the problem.
Yeah.
So I'll give you a simple example, right? A million companies, including some that we know, have tried to get people off email to do something else, right? Everybody goes, email, right? And it's never happened because nobody has meaningfully reimagined the problem in a way that speaks to anybody. So the market doesn't have a new definition of this problem called, I don't know how you'd call the problem. Would you call it asynchronous communication, or actually, I don't know what you'd call it, but let's call it digital communication to make it simple. Nobody's reimagined that problem in any significant way. And so nobody gives a shit. And so until that happens, or until a technology shows up that allows you to reimagine the problem, no one's going to take email out.
Yeah. I'm totally with you on that one. I just think that the life of Kingdom is decreasing, meaning the vendor.
Yeah, but Michelle, it depends, right? Like, look at Microsoft Office.
Yeah.
All they had to do, and put it in air quotes, they had to do was port that shit to the cloud.
Yeah.
And they did. And they did a reasonable job of it. And I say reasonable because it's still fucking hard as shit. Go try to fucking buy that shit and download it off the cloud. It makes you want to kill people. It is clearly, the guys that created Zoom did not create the fucking Microsoft download experience. But I digress. But in doing so, they made sure that the category door called cloud office productivity or cloud business productivity didn't open in a way that, for example, SAP, they're fucking unconscious. And so they let NetSuite just show up and say, hey, ERP in the cloud. Ba-boom, $7 billion company right under their nose.
Yeah, but so I have a theory about why are those two things different beyond the fact that, SAP was, criminally stupid to have allowed that to happen. And
Let's talk about how criminally stupid SAP is. It makes me happy.
One of my theories about that is demonic. It's the human mnemonic. So like, in order to get you and I.
Did you say demonic? The human demonic?
Yeah, exactly. It's the demonic. No, think about it. Like, how many hours of a day do you and I spend in PowerPoint, email? Let's just take those two. Could be Excel. But like the human knowledge worker, the average knowledge worker, you spend significant hours and hours and hours of time. By the way, that is one of the things that makes Tableau very defensible, is that, the users who use you, how sticky, and it's not just stickiness, it's that you learn your memories, right? So like the way the human brain works is we stop remembering how it worked. We just remember the heuristic, right? Control Alt Delete, and I shut my computer down. And at some point you've kind of even forgotten, except for that's the, a good name.
I don't think that works on my fucking Mac.
Well, it's,
I get exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
That's right. And we're creatures of habit. And when we've been trained to think about a problem and therefore a solution in a particular way.
This is one of the biggest issues of look at Salesforce. People don't like using it. So if you think about it, to some extent, there's a lot of factors to me in how defensible and how long-lived your category is. Certainly one piece of it is what's the technology IP barrier to entry. But another big piece of it is like, how hard is it to retrain me to use something else? And by the way, when you want to retrain all the people who know PowerPoint, you're not retraining the visionaries. We're the easy people to retrain. By the way, I'm not particularly visionary, but to your point, there are segments of users. The hardest part is you got to retrain the early majority, the late majority, and the laggards who don't want to learn a new thing. And so that's.
See, I think it's a lot less to do with that. I think that's with all due respect, and I do have a ton of respect for you. That's a product-centric view of the world. That's a view of the world that says the best product wins. And so everything you just said, whether it was barriers to entry on the technology or how hard is it to use the new thing, all of that is a product mindset view of the market. And I think it's a legitimate one and one we should have. However, that's not what fucking makes categories. Problems make categories, and POVs, points of view, make categories, stories. And so the frozen food category exists because in the 30s and 40s, Clarence Birdseye ran ads that said, hey, wouldn't it be awesome to have peas in February? And all of a sudden, people who never thought about fucking peas in February go, hey, where are the peas in February? Yeah. This aggression will not stand, man. And they buy frozen food. And so, look, if you look at it, you say, are there technology barriers to entering the word processing, spreadsheet, and presentation software space? Sure, there are. Yeah. But Google scaled all those and gave all that shit away. And Microsoft has 90+% market share. And so the issue has got nothing to do with a product perspective on a category. And it's got everything to do with a category design perspective, which is until the world reimagines the problem and therefore becomes open to a new solution. But if it's the same fuck problem and there's a category king, you're not going to do shit in that market space.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think it's a both and maybe to me it's all implied because like I was raised in Mercury and I've seen the power of the POV and I've seen the power of the product. And by the way, I've seen the power of selling. Like to me, the greatest, and I'm now purely talking about enterprise because what the fuck do I know about consumer software? But if you look at the greatest and most dominant enterprise software companies, I think that are building not just like the IPO, but they're like really building something enduring. They have a very provocative narrative about either a new problem or not a new problem. It kind of depends. Aptio's problem was new, right? Like why the fuck did IT care about costing? It's because guess what? Amazon is their fucking price list on the web. And your customers can go to Amazon and see the price list and Mr. CIO, they don't know what the fuck they're getting from IT. So like that problem may have been around for a million years, but the reason it mattered all of a sudden was because the context of the problem changed. Same idea with UserMind. Like
yes.
Yes. So I'm super, I'm all about the.
And by the way, I don't want to, as Archie Bunker says, misconstrue this. I agree completely. It's when you get all three right. In the book, yeah. It's called Prosecuting the Magic Triangle: product, company, and category. So I put sales inside of company, right? Yeah. And if you have all three, like we had at Mercury, holy fucking fuck, yeah. Right? Because now you have absolutely legendary breakthrough technology that is focused on the right shit, that is on the right platform, all that stuff that we had. You have a category that is opening people up to a new way of thinking, in our case, a new way of thinking about how to run IT, quote unquote, like a business. Sure. And then you show up and you got the biggest, baddest motherfuckers in the world, murderers row of salespeople. Mm-hmm. And I still to this day think selling is the hardest job in the company, because getting people to give you millions of dollars for zeros and ones, I don't care how cool the zeros and ones are wrapped in a category. Yeah. I don't care how awesome the zeros and ones are. I think it's still the hardest job. But when you get all three right, boom, right?
Yeah.
So how are you trying to do that at UserMind? How are you trying to get product, company, and category right?
Well, look, I mean, I think to me, when you start with the POV, like, category, and I'm not so much naming, like we haven't figured out we're not yet to the point where getting it to the masses matters, right? To me, it's like, how do I get the first 30 visionaries to bet on what I do? And that's much more about going to them and articulating credibly the transformations that are happening in their business and why what we do is timely and relevant. And look, at our stage of company, a lot of that is just impersonated in me. We're not a big enough company where like I need a massive deck and a sales kickoff to like train the hundreds of thousands of people here to say what I say. Like I go have those conversations, and
you mean to tell me that if you get in front of a customer, the likelihood they buy goes up in a very material way? Is that what you're telling me, Michelle?
Oh, and by the way, it's
I mean, that was true a long time ago. I can only imagine now that it's your own baby.
Yeah, but it's really not even just about you're getting in front of a customer. It's the right empowered stakeholder. Like I got to go talk to somebody who's trying to change their company. Not only do they believe what I'm saying, and they're like, yes, millennials have no attention span. Yes, customer experience is becoming strategic. Yes, our systems don't accomplish that today. Let me give you, and the best ones when I talk to them, they can give me 20 examples of where they're letting their customers down.
That's when you know you're winning, right? When the customer starts taking your shit and building on top of it around their problems in their life, right? Once they go, oh yeah, well, and you don't even know the half of it. What about?
I don't just need that. I need them to be an empowered visionary in their company who can break glass to change their company. Because, they can't go and say, it's fucking Salesforce. Everyone buys Salesforce. Of course we should buy Salesforce. They have to go and say, this fucking user mind shit, this is going to take us to the next level. This is going to solve these 25 pain points. And guess what? I am empowered, right, at a senior level to go change that company. So
it's so interesting you say that. I just had a dialogue on Legends and Losers with this unbelievable guy named Chris Voss. And he wrote a book actually published by HarperCollins, my same publisher, came out the month before Play Bigger did last year. And the book's called Never Split the Difference. It's a book on negotiations. And this guy was the lead hostage and terror negotiator for the fucking BI.
Wow.
Yeah. And so when he's doing his job, lives are on the line.
Holy shit.
And one of the things that he said in our dialogue was, if the person you're negotiating with is single-threaded, you're fucked. And what he means by single-threaded is there's just sort of one line of connection to them and their organization. And he said it is often the case. Yeah. And so you gotta either find other threads, or you gotta find a way to negotiate with somebody who is actually the right person. But if there's essentially a rogue person that's kind of out over here doing their own thing, who doesn't necessarily have the backing of their organization, you're in a lot of trouble. And you got to figure out if they're single-threaded or not. And he spent quite a bit of time circling around that concept.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Look, I mean, I think, you look at our pitch. I mean, we're not going to mid-level people because, look, we love them. And our when we go into an implementation, we have power users, and those power users are quite often the ops teams. They might have quite often stakeholders from IT involved, but we need an empowered visionary. So if you look at our deals, the sponsor is 2 levels down from the CEO, and they are driving change. They are, either on the IT side, where IT is considered an enabler, right, where IT is respected and IT believes its job is to bring cool new shit to the business, right, to drive profitability, or we're dealing with a business, stakeholder, a CMO or a CCO, or somebody who's like, fuck, in order to make my business objectives, I have to fucking break some glass and change some shit. And so, that's where, when I look at kind of the phases of category creation, I mean, your early adopters are visionaries. They have to believe that your promised vision to be state, right? The outcome of the story is a thing they have to have. And they're betting on you. And they're saying, hey, look, and look, part of it is the product, part of it is the whole team who services them. Part of it's our expertise. When I walk in and say, guys, I interviewed 300 companies before we wrote one line of code. We've done this now for N companies. Like, people are looking to be led. By the way, that's what I thought Mercury did beautifully. And what I think category creators uniquely have an opportunity to do is by defining this problem, by defining the solution to the problem, if you can generate a unique IP that like people believe you've walked that path and you know how to walk the path the best, now you've partnered with them. Now you're not a vendor. Right now you're a partner in their transformation. And ideally, I always tell customers when I go work with them, look, I don't have all the answers. Here's the cool part. You're going to tell me stuff that's going to move my company in the right direction. And I'm going to bring you things that's going to move your company in the right direction. And it doesn't really matter at the end. Does it really matter if you came to me and said, hey, Michelle, here's this amazing use case with, optimizing some part of my business. And I'm like, holy fuck, I never thought about that before. And guess what? We have to change a bunch of shit about the architecture to make that work. But boom, we did it and we got it. Or if I came to you and said, hey, I've been talking to these 6 other customers and they're talking to me about, as an example, how to take IoT data and bring it back into the customer journey. And like, have you been thinking about that? And, they say, oh, yes or no, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter. Right? It's this community of thought leadership about a problem. And so to me, that's the fun of creating.
You just said it. It's the community of thought leadership about a problem. Mm-hmm. If we want to create categories and we want those categories to tip, a community of thought leadership around the problem. That's awesome.
Yeah. Anyway.
Now I got to ask you, what's it like being a founder today and a founder CEO today for you?
Well, I mean, it's for sure the hardest thing I've ever done. The biggest, it's funny, when I started the company, you've hired people before, you've fired people before, I'd built product before, I'd managed a budget before. So like practically everything you're doing, I mean, there's some things that I've done, like I never negotiated a real estate contract before fucking becoming a founder. But like the majority of the basic things you've done before. To me, the biggest problem or the biggest difference is, Ben Horowitz calls it managing your own psychology, is that you're now making all these decisions in what I call like the fog of war, which is the emotional state in which you make things effectively renders you fucking stupid. I remember I was hiring my first engineer and we hired this person and we were having all these challenges. And, Michelle in a big company, I would have just picked out my hand and been like, look, dude, it's not working. You need to go home. Like, it's not fucking working. And here I was sitting here and I'm like, well, holy fuck, it's my only developer. So like, what's worse? Some dickhead writing code or like no fucking code?
Or no dickhead writing code.
no dickhead, right? And I'm just like, and so, or like your interview, you're trying to like close somebody and they don't want to join the company and you're just like existential angst, holy shit, why don't they love me? So to be honest, and look, there's many, many practical skills I'm learning. So I don't want to minimize like the actual job of running a company, but that was the most early profound difference to me because it doesn't change.
On the recruiting side?
Just on how my emotional state,
your emotional state around all of that shit.
Holy shit, was so different. And it probably took me, to be honest. I mean, I went and got a therapist. I was like, holy fuck, I got to figure this shit out. It probably took me 3 years till I actually kind of figured out how to manage my own psychology enough to be, marginally effective, right? To feel like I've become, a basically operating CEO as opposed to just like this freak, this like founder freak, running around fucking, I'm not fucking everything up, but like, that was just, and even though I read Ben's book before I started the company, like, I don't think anything prepared me for that reality at all.
I remember he's got that great quote where he's Horowitz, where he says, I'm going to paraphrase, but it's something like, when I was a startup CEO, I slept like a baby. I woke up every 2 to 3 hours screaming.
Yep. Yeah. He calls it the struggle. The struggle.
And so how have you managed your own psychology?
Oh, gosh. Well, I mean, therapy is a big part of it.
Yeah, really? I mean, is that something that you think is a big advantage or a big help?
For me, it's been. I mean, so I think, as an example, I remember I was negotiating a real estate deal, and this in our community, there's a guy who owns a lot of real estate. He's probably the second biggest owner of real estate in Seattle. And he was coming personally to negotiate this deal with me because he's really supportive of startups. And he got there and I had thought he was going to negotiate with me about one space. and he was negotiating with me about another space. And doesn't that sound like a silly thing? Like, it's not a big deal. And like, my level of rage went from like 0 to fucking 100 billion in a second. And I managed to like not, tell him to go fuck himself. But like, I just thought to myself, well, gosh, this can't be about the current situation. So like the, biggest impact for me of therapy is kind of going back and seeing where my emotional reaction really isn't a current thing. And it's kind of coming from something else from the past. And like, look, as that's been another big thing. It's not just I'm a founder, I'm a CEO. And so, I don't know how Amnon felt at Mercury, but like, people never stop watching what you do all the time. And you don't realize the impact of even small things you say on people.
They watch which hand you use to wipe your butt, right?
And then you're walking down the hall and like, somebody asks you, hey, like they show you a product feature and they're like, do you like it? And you're like, yeah. And all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, you hear that, the engineering team was told that I have to have this feature. And it's like, Michelle liked the feature. And so it's super important. And, I didn't even like really look at it. And so, I think for me, that's another part of being a CEO that was, took a while to grow into, is just, it's a really different role than being any other level of executive role I've had in my career, because the amount that's projected, the amount of things that people are reading into you, you are the company. That's been another really kind of interesting evolution curve for me, is to kind of think really profoundly. I mean, your impact on almost any communication you make. It's funny. I did an all hands as another example last week, and we were talking about, we'll raise again end of this year. And I was saying, sales is going to double and engineering will grow like 30% or something. And one of my engineers took me aside and was like, what the fuck are you talking about? How the fuck can like engineering not double if sales is going to double? And I'm like, dude, I have 3 fucking reps in like, in like 3 reps, West, Central, East. So like doubling is 6, and like fucking engineering is 18 people. So like, I'm not like, what the fuck are you talking about? So in relative terms, you're probably
and also the beauty of a software company, supposedly, or supposedly, as people say today, because they can't fucking say supposedly, is that it's an increasing returns business, right? That is to say, we build a piece of software that's legendary, and it costs us whatever it costs us to build that. And then whether we sell it once or we sell it a million times, our cost was whatever it was, right? And so the way you scale is actually, if you have to double engineering as you double sales, then you're fucking doing something wrong, right?
Well, look, but even something so basic is like, actually the relative headcount's pretty close. They'll probably grow engineering by some number like that, or we grow sales, just given where we are as a company. But again, it's a little tiny lesson to me that, if I'd given absolute numbers, that person would have been like, oh, that makes sense. Or maybe they would ask me a different question. But, I didn't even think about it, because I know the data. I have all the numbers. I know all the things you just described. Like, hey, it's all relative. And yet most of the people in the company don't have all that context, right? What's so obvious to us that this is how a software company scales. And it just is a continuous lesson to me that, so much of, if it's funny, customer experience externally, what we do is create context. But, if you hire really talented people, it's all about creating context. And, the kind of role of the CEO as chief communicator, and just even the things you miss. I mean, I've been pitching and talking and speaking for 44 years. And, think about something that small. And luckily, by the way, I have a company where that engineer slacked me and said, hey, I have a couple questions. Do you mind? Right? Like, yeah, I love that. But anyway, so gosh, I mean, I feel like my growth as a CEO has been just on so many levels, whether it's kind of my emotional trajectory or my, kind of trying to learn what is a CEO and how do you, it's both being accountable, it's communicating, it's sharing the vision, it's sharing the mission.
And how do you design a legendary life as you design a legendary business, right? Because you've got, I know, how many hours, you probably are working close to 80 hours a week, are you not?
I'm probably 60, 70.
60.
Yeah, I don't work.
So you don't work on the weekend?
Generally not. I mean, I there's exceptions, board meetings, end of quarter. If I'm recruiting people, anything that like really has to happen, I will do. But, I try to not work as much as I can from, late Friday night to Sunday evening. You know, I might do a couple email, but for me, Saturdays, I really try to unplug. And I look
Is there anything special you like to do on Saturdays, Michelle, that while you're unplugging? Now, I know right now you're training for this hike, which is awesome.
I mean, I like to be outdoors. I fucking love the sun, man. Like, I want to be hiking, on the water, kayaking, like wherever I can be to be outside in the sun, doing something that's fucking like real in the real world. I love that.
And what do you do on the water? You kayak. What else do you do on the water?
You know, I guess I mostly kayak. I live on the water and I have my own kayak. You know, I'd love to have a little, you know, motorboat eventually, but you know, not yet. But yeah, I mean, whatever. It doesn't matter. Fucking anything. Hiking, running, you know, skiing in the winter, fucking kayaking, you know, whatever. Honestly, anything I can do to move my body and be outside.
Yeah.
Pretty fucking.
Yeah. It is amazing how we feel different when we're doing something physical, athletic, in what when I was a kid was called out of doors.
Well,
right? Because I grew up in a part of the world where if it was nice out, you went out of doors, like right the fuck now, because it was not going to be nice for very long.
yeah,
It's still weird living here, right? Like I look out the window right now, and it's like fucking beautiful day, and I'm sitting inside.
dude, Seattle, it's fucking get out. Like any day it's sunny, everyone's like, get the fuck outside right now because there's not sun 24/7.
The other fun thing about a city like Seattle or Vancouver, when the weather is nice, like everybody takes all their clothes off and goes outside too. It's like, wow.
It's not always good, I can tell you. It might not be good if I was doing it. I also love to cook. I find cooking really relaxing, and I like to have groups of friends over. So for me, I mean, everyone's different. I'm actually very introverted. I'm not an extrovert, contrary to what most people.
But you play one on TV really well.
I do, but you know, work drains me. I mean, being sociable, sales calls, it's very draining. So, you know, I just know myself really well. Some people can work 24/7 and they're probably very effective at it. I'm not. You know, I can be hyper productive. You know, I feel like when I'm working, I am incredibly productive, but I also know that I can't sustain that. So as I've gotten older, I just try to be more honest with myself. And so I need downtime. You know, I have dogs. I love them. I have great friends. I have a blessed life. I mean, the bottom line is how many people, you know, have had all of the, you know, I mean, like I dropped out of Harvard. So I had these incredible opportunities. I've been part of.
I didn't know that about you. Tell me about that.
Yeah. I got a military scholarship to Harvard and I went there and I just hated it. It's like all the things I've never really learned. It's why I don't live in Silicon Valley at the moment. I just thought everybody was there fucking like, you know, pursuing their resume and kind of a lot of rich people. And I just didn't dig the vibe. I came from a really poor family and I kind of worked my way there as a way to get out of where I was. And I just hated it. I thought it was really insincere and kind of a lot of fake bullshit. And, you know, turned out to be the best thing I ever did. I mean, I went home and I had to my mom was like, get a fucking job, pay rent. You can't, you know, live at home. And I didn't.
So how old were you when your mom said, hey, fuck you, you can't come back home?
Well, I mean, she let me come back home, but I had to pay rent. So I was probably.
Okay. So there was no free ride coming back home.
Fucking ride. So I went and got a job at a convenience store. And I worked like fucking $4.50 an hour. My first.
This was after you quit Harvard?
Yeah, I didn't know.
I just want to understand. So you're in your early 20s, right?
I was 19 at the time, right?
You were 19. Okay. And you said, hey, Mom, I'm going to quit Harvard, move back in and get a job here at the old fucking 7-Eleven.
At a gas station, at a Shell station.
A Shell station.
I didn't even know how to fucking interview for a job.
And your mom was stoked, I guess.
My parents were horrified. Now they don't mind so much, but
they've forgiven you now.
Yeah, I think now they've forgiven.
Where did you grow up, Michelle?
Well, I was born in Florida, but I grew up in Providence, Rhode Island, in New England. Yeah.
And you said you grew up poor. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, my parents divorced when I was 8. My mom was a nurse, but, you know, she supported us. And, you know, my dad was a professor, didn't make much money. So at the time, you know, I mean, he paid child support, but, you know, he made much less than my mom. So, you know, this is a lot to kind of.
How many kids? How many siblings do you have?
You know, just 2 of us. But, yeah.
And are you the older or the younger?
I'm the younger.
I would have guessed that.
Yeah. Yeah, I was my sister.
Normally the older is not as aggressive as you are.
I think I became aggressive because we moved when my parents divorced and we moved to New England. My mom bought a house to renovate in kind of the ghetto area of the town in an area of Providence called the Armory District. And you have to get tough real fast as a nerd, walking around in the ghetto or in the shitty section of town. And so I didn't take a lot of shit when I was a kid. I never really have.
Did you get into fights and stuff? Like what was going on?
Oh yeah.
Fist fights.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
It's a little unusual that a young gal would be getting into fist fights, is it not? Or am I being, as Ali G would call it, sexualist?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it is. But my parents are iconoclastic. I mean, my dad was an objector to the Vietnam War, and my mother, she grew up in Germany, and she sued for independence. She actually asked the courts to take her out of her home. She was in an abusive home. So I think my parents kind of raised us.
You mean she wanted to be emancipated before she was 18?
Yeah.
And was she successful with that?
Yeah, she was put in. Actually, she worked as a maid from when she was 14 to when she went to college.
She got emancipated legally at 14?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's my genetic stock. So, I make a lot more sense when you know that about my parents, right?
And how do you think that, to use your phrase, which I love, context, growing up that way, plays into kind of who you are today?
Oh, 1,000%. I feel like, my life is very different from my parents, but, I try to be very principled. It's when I think part of why I was an effective product person in the software business and why I still am is that I believe that has a tremendous amount of integrity. And when I go and I tell a customer, I'm going to build this feature, I'm going to do this thing, they know I'm going to. And it's funny. It's not scalable. It's not like it's not because the vision's right. I mean, it may also be right and people might be inspired by it. But, kind of my superpower in that context is that I will deliver. And I think that kind of principled integrity is something I got from my parents, although I express it very much in my own, who would have thunk, right? I mean, I'm in software, it's about product development. And, think about how many, you probably never heard all the stories, but I broke glass at Mercury. I'm sure I offended half of Israeli engineering and,
you were always on the list.
I don't even know what list that is, but yeah, I was, I don't.
The shit disturber list.
I am.
What are we going to do about Michelle?
Yeah, I've always had that problem. Yeah.
Yeah. What are we going to do about Michelle? Now, I hesitate like fuck to ask you this, but I'm going to ask you anyway.
Yeah.
And the reason I hesitate is I wonder a lot if talking about it makes it worse, but there's been so much in the media very recently about women in tech and women raising venture capital and, that big New York Times story and that VC guy that got fired and, Reid Hoffman sending out his thing, telling all of VCs to promise to be decent human beings and shit.
Yeah.
So I hate to bring it up, but it's so fucking in the news.
Yeah.
You tell me, do you want to talk about, if there's...
Yeah, I never used to, but now I do. Yeah. So ask away.
I don't want to ask necessarily, but more because I don't have a specific. Because I want to ask you, do you want to talk about it? And if you don't, fuck it, I don't need to talk about it.
No. So I'll give you two things. I think. I personally, I've never had the experience that of the sexual harassment or anything like super extreme. But
I think because you scare everybody, they think you tear their fucking heads.
I would Lorena Bob at them. Like that shit ain't going down. So, but look, I think, so I would say two things. One, I read Lean In kind of as I left or maybe as I was leaving Aptio, and it was a revelation in my life. And it was a revelation, and I've, since reflected on it, I think it's really true. So like the extreme examples are, these egregious examples of harassment. But I think there's two kind of more insidious and prevalent challenges women face, and I specifically, in some cases really without knowing, have faced. So one, I have experienced as you become more powerful, you are less liked, right? That's one of the central thesis of LinkedIn, is that when men are more powerful, you're more likable. And when women are more powerful, we're a fucking bitch. And I will tell you, I mean, how blessed was I really to be in Mercury, in an Israeli company where I feel like strong women there was never a problem. Ever, ever, ever. Like
I mean, so your perspective is we had strong women and...
Oh yeah. I mean, I never found any of the, Israeli men are not afraid of women in general. Like they are, but culturally it's a different society, right? Women are in the military. And so I think I benefited from that in my early years. But I'll tell you, as I became, both in my tenure at HP and kind of in my experience at Aptio, the more powerful I became, and look, granted, I'm an extreme end of the spectrum. I'm super aggressive and super direct. And, Ben Horowitz once said to me, Michelle, like, stop verbally punching people in the face. So I probably on the extreme end, I should like definitely moderate what I'm doing to be more successful. But there's an and.
I don't know if that's true. I honestly don't know if that's true.
But the and is that a guy like me, if I was like a guy who was that aggressive, brash, successful, confident, I would have been a CEO 10 years sooner, or whatever relevant thing you want to say.
You really believe that?
I definitely, and I experienced it more as VP level. Like it is so, it's just not popular. It is not to be the woman in the room who is just a fucking hard ass. Not a good thing to be. Very polarizing, very polarizing. So
that breaks my heart, and when I read all this stuff, I was shocked by it. And I'm not saying that I'm the best boy ever. Because I'm not. I pissed a lot of people off, but I've never pissed anybody off in this. I refer to it as sexual harassment panda. I don't know if you remember that old South Park episode. That makes it a little funnier for me to talk about because it's not a funny topic. But anyway, I never had any problems there because I think women can tell the difference between someone who's friendly and affectionate and physical and a fucking creep.
Yeah. Well, and look,
so I had no idea it was so bad, Michelle. Like, Heather Clancy came on Legends and Losers, and she's been an incredibly successful journalist for, 25 years. I've known her, and she's amazing.
Yeah.
And she told me on Legends and Losers, she doesn't think things are even any better than when she started. And I was like, how can that, it's 2017. How can this fucking be true?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, look, I mean, I think, so I've also been blessed to look at people like Ben Horowitz or, Yuval Scarlett or, you were never afraid of me at Mercury. Like there are a lot of exceptional leaders who have been indifferent to me being a woman. So, let's just take that cadre of people aside. But, the quite the broad bell curve. And I think a lot of it has to do with insecurity. You're activating people's insecurity. And I think when and the majority of people are more insecure than not, really secure leaders are rare. I mean, of the three of you, like Amnon, you
really believe that really secure leaders are rare?
Oh yes. I think that why aren't more they've proven, by the way, forget men, women, they've proven that CEOs groomed from within are like statistically more successful than CEOs who come from outside companies, right? I mean,
that makes total sense,
right? And like that's Collins. I think it's Good to Great, right? That's research. So why the fuck do so few companies are they able to groom people from within? It's because, they call them, ones and twos. It's because it's really fucking hard to hire people you think might be better than you. It takes a very, very secure leader to do that. So like,
but isn't also part of it, think about yourself. When I met you, you were a product manager. Did you even have people working for you?
Probably not. Yeah.
So you were an individual contributor, product manager.
Yeah. And I was crazy as fuck.
Oh, believe me, I remember. But I always loved you for it. I mean, this may sound funny. I don't know everything about you, but I know who you are, if you know what I mean, right? I kind of got who you are immediately.
Yeah.
And Richard Bach famously said, rarely do people of the same family grow up under the same roof.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if we're the same family, but we're the same fucking tribe.
Same tribe.
And so I got that about you right away.
Yeah.
But the thing about the insecurity, I made a decision several years ago, Michelle. I don't want to do anything with anybody who's not over themselves.
Yeah.
And people who are the big ego and want to show you their new watch and, that are just, that whole fucking thing.
I don't know.
It's like, would you just get over yourself?
Yeah.
Like Bill Gates wins. Get over yourself, right? Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. Yeah.
But you don't think do you think there are way less CEOs who are, if you use my phrase, over themselves?
Totally. I mean, and I don't think you even need to bring women into it. I mean, just the fact that like the majority of CEOs can't hire and groom a replacement internally tells you about people's level of comfort or people's ability to talk to,
and to get back to my point around when you and I met, so what year would that have been? 2003, maybe 2000, no, maybe a little 2005, something like that.
Yeah.
So you're a product manager and I'm a senior executive, and here you are today as a CEO. I fully accept you for that. Like, there's no part of me that relates to you like a junior product manager or whatever, right? Because I've seen a lot of other people in business make this journey.
Yeah.
And it didn't, I mean, I pretty much knew the first time I met you, you were a high potential, high performer. And so I would have been more surprised for you not to be, I mean, I didn't know necessarily you were going to be a founder CEO, but I would have been surprised if you hadn't become very successful, however that ended up, however you wanted to do that, right? Because it seemed like who you are.
Yeah.
But I guess my point in all that is, it's so interesting. Like, people say, well, to get a raise or to get a promotion, I got to quit because they got me in this box here, in your case, product manager. And so they can't have me be, here.
Yeah, or whatever. Yeah.
And so, I think part of it is just CEO failure to groom. But the other part of it is, I think in organizations, we don't understand this. One of the things I love about Mercury, and I've never actually sat down and done it, man, it would be great to do, would be to go through the list of how many former Mercury people are CEOs, and how many of them are some CEO, EVP, SV, very senior executive at a successful company. It's a long fucking list, right?
Yep. Yep.
Because we took that shit seriously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, Mercury was exceptional. I mean, what a functional culture. What a functional culture. Yeah. Yeah. So, I think that's definitely, the other interesting thing is, so I was very blessed fundraising, right? Kind of back to your topic about being a woman. And I think this one's got to be crazy for women. Ben Horowitz obviously knew me for 7 years, and I went into the Andreessen so Aptio was Andreessen's first investment. And so,
it was their first investment was Aptio.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, think about that, right? Like, I knew Ben, I led the ops for acquisition. He was my direct boss. I joined their first investment and was part of it being successful. So talk about how much track record I had with them and the firm kind of more broadly. And, a lot of investing is betting on people, and certainly in enterprise, right? It's trust. But, people have said to me, and I really do believe it's true, that when you fundraise, if I hadn't had a Ben, I do think women and men are treated differently. And there's been a bunch of articles written recently about how, when investors invest in a man, there's a lot of focus on the promise of the potential of the CEO. And when they invest in women, there's a lot of like risk mitigation. How do you think about all these problems in your business? And while, I haven't experienced that because I had a unique situation and, a unique track record, I also believe that is true. And I think, until, VCs really hold themselves to account, and I think Andreessen's an exceptional firm, and Menlo, I feel like my investors are people who didn't look at me and see a woman founder. So there are definitely many people, you can find your tribe. But I think that it is definitely a thing that needs to be looked at more broadly. Because look, there's no fucking reason why there should be 7% women fucking founders. Like, and to say that like there aren't people founding, I mean, fuck you, that's bullshit. There's so many women founders. I meet now people come. The reason why I talk about this topic now, when I started the company, I think I was like, what do I have to say on the topic? And I haven't accomplished much yet, and blah blah blah. And now I'm like, fuck this. I have a platform. It doesn't matter. Like, on some level, it doesn't matter whether Usermind is a public company or not a public company. To get this far, I'm very proud. And I definitely want to help.
As you should be.
Right. And I want to help other women come behind and get more opportunity based on what I've learned. So again, even though I feel like I've had this incredibly blessed life to have worked in companies with these incredibly secure leaders who could mentor me, help me, open doors for me, be completely unfazed by my,
Michelleness.
Michelleness, which has not changed. I think that, like, what an exceptional life that is. Like, look at my life trajectory. Without, Jay Larson helped me get out of the field. Yuval helped me get into products and actually helped me take over.
Were you an SE? Is that where you were?
Yeah, I was.
Yeah, I think I remember that.
Yeah, they didn't want to let me go. I had all the biggest accounts in New England.
Yeah, I remember that. You would go in and do demo kung fu, and everybody in the room would be on the floor, and we'd walk out with millions of dollars. And
yeah.
Interesting that you didn't want to go into sales, because you also would have been great if you actually went from SE to a bag carrying rep.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, at the time I talked to Zohar Gilad, who was running products before Yuval took over, and I asked at the time, because I wanted to be Amnon. I don't know if I was ever open with you. I wanted to be the next CEO of Mercury. That was my only goal in life. I wasn't looking to leave. If I could have been taking over from Amnon someday, that would have been the ultimate for me. And so, I asked people, how do you become a CEO? What do you do if you're just me, this little pre-sales person? And the feedback was go into product or go into sales. And, I thought about it.
You make shit and sell shit and everything else is bullshit.
Exactly. Or my favorite is, what do you do when somebody puts a gun to your head? Take the gun away from your head and then shoot them. Like, how Israeli can you get? These like incredible fucking
makes all the sense in the world to me.
It does, let me tell you. Anyway, so I just didn't think I was motivated enough by money. I never have been. So I didn't feel like
to go into sales.
Yeah, didn't think that was my and I'm right. Like I'm definitely in sales now, and I don't do it for the money. I never have. So I don't think I would have made a particularly good rep.
Well, I disagree with you, but that's okay. You've done great regardless.
Yeah, and I love product. I think I ended up in the right place. I really, really love. So I think very few product people, I call it clicking in, are able to go from market, compete, POV, problem to like product suite all the way down to features. And you win if you can drive alignment.
Yeah.
So many great strategists have a strategy but can't build the fucking features and execute. And the greatest product people drive this incredible alignment between this big vision that they can articulate and like actually how the features add up to solve that problem.
Yeah.
And so that was always, once I figured out that's what product was, it took me a little bit of time. I knew that was what I should do. And, it's been an incredible journey. So.
And what excites you about the future, Michelle?
Learning. I feel I say that, the main thing I want about my chapter in life at Usermind is I want to rise to the occasion. That's my theme at Usermind. And what I mean by that is I've been given this incredible opportunity. I think I found a huge problem. It's probably the biggest problem I found in my career. I would say it's probably a 50 or $60 billion market. Like literally by 10x the biggest I found in my career. I've raised money from these incredible people to solve this problem, and I've hired just these incredible people. And so I feel like all I want to do is rise to the occasion of that opportunity and, become the best CEO I can be and build the best company and product that I can. And if I can look back and all of that is true for myself, and I've grown, I've changed, I can see that I've changed, then I think I will have been really, really proud. So, to feel like in your life the best is yet to come, I think is a great feeling because you're kind of becoming the best self you can be.
Well, and I think you've got a lot going for you, Michelle. The category opportunity as you've created it is massive. There's no question in my mind. And I see an emerging mega trend. And it's starting really now with this vintage of startups, which is there was an undisclosed paradigm in the software business that we create software, particularly applications, that the user works for. And now we're in the era where the technology works for the user. It goes and gets stuff. It synthesizes stuff. It presents stuff. Bots or AI can do data entry. There's voice that you can say, go do this, get me that, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think we're in the very beginning of an incredibly exciting stage where there's a new layer, if you will, being put on top of all these apps that turn them into apps that work for you as opposed to having you work for the apps.
Totally.
And so that's an incredibly exciting thing. And, you've clearly carved out a very cool spot in that emerging world.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about it.
And I think you're a legendary CEO. And I think you're, to use the phrase that is popular now, I think you're a badass.
Thanks, Chris. Well, right back at you, man. I mean, I feel like I remember when I started Aptio, remembering all of the stuff that you had said at Mercury about categories and how the POV elevates the company, and watching it happen at Mercury. I was at Mercury years before you joined. And remembering seeing us go from being really a testing company to being a tools company to being a strategic partner to these customers. I mean, that was a lesson I never forgot. And I'm a synthesizer. I will pull a framework out of anything. And then to see it happen again at Aptio. So I think, you guys have made a huge impact with, your ideas, certainly on my life. So.
Well, thank you. I mean, Mercury, it was the greatest team I was ever on. There's no question about it. It was murderer's row, and the evidence is very clear, right?
Yeah. Well, ripple effects, right? Still changing lives. So.
Yeah. Anything else before we wrap, Michelle?
No, this is a pleasure. I didn't really know what to expect, but I had a great time, Chris. Thanks so much.
Well, it's so great to see you. And I'll start where I finished with you, which is I'm just so proud of you. Fucking A, Michelle. Fucking A. Way to go.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. And on the tribe comment, I always say to people, record speeds, man. Occasionally you meet people and you're a 66 and they're a 66 and you talk how you really see the world. And so this was that kind of discussion for me. So I appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been an absolute fucking pleasure. And I think you're amazing. And I can't wait till you go public, and I can't wait till you become the category king. And
and hopefully we get a drink before then, man.
I hope so. Do you get down to the Excited Valley?
All the time.
Yeah. Well, I would love to see you. Let me know when you're going to be down next. And I would love to see you. Maybe I can entice you to come over to Santa Cruz.
Yeah, and say hi.
Yeah, say hi to Carrie and meet my dinosaurs and, go for a walk on the beach, or maybe I'll take you surfing, or maybe you'll take me kayaking.
Awesome. Let's do it. All right.
I would love it.
Have a great night. It's great.
Thanks, Michelle. Be legendary, my friend.
Don't be a loser.
I know you. Exactly.
Be a loser and a legend.
Exactly. Well, there she is, Michelle Feaster on Legends and Losers. Fantastic. And if you enjoyed this episode, and you know somebody else who you think would enjoy this episode with Michelle, then please go ahead and forward the link to that person right now. Also want to let you know that I am pleased to be partnering with my friends at Wildcat Ventures to do an exclusive executive event in San Francisco on September 6th in the Dogpatch. So if you want to come to this evening event from 5:30 to 8:30, where we talk about how legends design and dominate categories, I'll be signing copies of Play Bigger and hanging out with my friend Bruce Cleveland and all the other folks at Wildcat Ventures. If you want an invitation to this VIP executive event, email us now before it sells out. They're going fast. blackhole@legendsandlosers.com, September 6th, 5:30 to 8:30 p.m. in San Francisco. All right. Let's see. Oh, yes. And one other event I want to tell you about, One Life Fully Lived. If you want to dream, plan, and live your best life, join us in Sacramento, October 21st and 22nd. And for information on the One Life Fully Lived event, you can email blackhole@legendsandlosers.com. And if you want to visit me in San Diego, Denver, Toronto, or New York, go to legendsandlosers.com and click on NetSuite Tour to request your VIP invitation to the Next Ready Business Tour with NetSuite, August 24th in San Diego, September 20th in Denver, September 26th in Toronto, September 27th in New York, and November 9th in Miami. blackhole@legendsandlosers.com. All right. We would like to thank HarperCollins Instant Classic, Play Bigger, How Pirates, Dreamers, and Innovators Create and Dominate Markets, Equity Directory, connecting legendary startups to the talent and resources they need to build legendary businesses, NetSuite, #1 in cloud ERP, come out and see us on the road, onelifefullylived.org. Dream, plan, and live your best life. And you are invited to our annual West Coast event in October in Sacramento. Come check us out. Spiro, the sales app for salespeople who like to make money, at spiro.ai. Verve, the official coffee of Legends and Losers. Verve Coffee Roasters in Santa Cruz, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Tokyo, and always at vervecoffee.com. Outposition.com, legendary marketing and category design in beautiful Singapore. PursuingResults.com, the producers of legendary podcasts and this one. Interview Valet, podcast interview marketing. If you want to build your business, get your butt on some podcasts and get some business done. Never Split the Difference, the smash hit book from HarperCollins, written by our friend and guest, FBI negotiator Chris Voss. And if you haven't heard the Chris Voss episode of Legends and Losers, wowie wee wow, check it out. And speaking of legendary things, the Unbreakable Mind podcast with our friend and guest, Navy SEAL Mark Divine. Check it out, Unbreakable Mind. And of course, the World Wildlife Fund, because our planet matters. This oddcast is the sole property of the Legends and Losers Oddcast Network, and we would love it if you shared the shit out of it. All rights do remain disturbed. In the event of a water landing, Legends and Losers can be an awesome flotation device. The studio was produced in a studio that does contain nuts, clearly. Legends and Losers may contain forward-looking statements, backward-looking statements, present moment-looking statements, and completely insane statements. Remember that actual results may differ and future events could differ materially from anything you hear on Legends and Losers. Listen to LinkedIn Park. Listen to Linkin Park and RIP Chester. Man, I miss you. Support your local entrepreneurs. Don't be lame. Get out of the passing lane. Thank you, Candy Dandy. We love you. And hey, Colin, this oddcast really ties the room together, doesn't it? Our deepest apologies today go out to Nick Halstad, CEO of Cognitive Logic. Sorry, Nikki, we just ran out of time for you. That's it. We hope to see you soon on another episode of Legends and Losers.